G'day, Tony here. I've done a lot of fishing in New Zealand South Island from both the kayak and boats, particularly small boats, and oftentimes with quite a lot of success. My history of fishing in the South Island was I was brought up fishing in Otago. Through my 20s, 30s and into my 40s I was a fanatical fly fisherman and didn't really think anything else mattered. But as the kids got a bit older, I brought a boat to start taking them biscuiting, and of course the mind starts turning to fishing. I used to do a lot of fly fishing from the boats at one time, but for those of you that know the South Island of New Zealand, particularly the hydro lakes, you realise that wind is there an awful lot of the time, and that rather plays a bit of havoc with your fly fishing. So I started experimenting with trolling and spinning. Over the years I've done a lot of trolling, and I've learnt to use the diving lures, where I pick a depth, the lure to go to the correct depth. So in conjunction with a fish finder, I'm targeting a particular depth, oftentimes where the fish are marking on the fish finder. I find that particularly in the hydro lakes and the smaller lakes, you often, for a lot of the day, as long as it doesn't get too bright, that I call it the magic 5 metre mark, that if you work around that 5 to 6 metre mark, you often get the browns that are heading into the colder water to cool off because they've been feeding up shallow and around the edges, and the rainbows, which will often be a bit deeper but often come into the weed zone around the edges of the weed to feed. So that depth is often good to target, and particularly in the hydro lakes. The bigger glacier fed lakes, such as Wanaka and Hawea and Ohau, it's a different ball game, so this doesn't really apply to those lakes. So the lures I use tend to be bibbed diving lures. This one is a jump stumper, is one of my all-time favourite lures. They dive to about that 4 metre line, which makes them ideal between 5 and 5, 6 and a wee bit deeper metres of water. Sometimes I put single hooks on them, but I often have trouble getting them to swim dead right. But the stump jumpers have a real vibration to them and seem to pull in fish from further away than some of the other lures. But that 4 metre mark is really quite good. Another one I use regularly are the Rapalas, and oddly enough it slipped my mind which Rapalas these are, but they dive to about that 4 metre line also, or fractionally deeper, and that's a solid one, and we've got there an articulated one. I find them also very good, but they don't quite have the vibration of the stump jumpers. So sometimes the stump jumpers will pick up fish and these won't. So the setup I use to fish those lures is generally just a moderate sized spinning rod, spinning reel normally with about 10 pound braid on it, with a litre of perhaps 6 or 8 pound fluorocarbon. I often put a swivel, maybe 3 feet from the end, and then I put a slightly lighter piece of fluorocarbon from there back, so I can change my leader reasonably regularly without having to change my whole leader, because my whole leader length might be 2 rod lengths. And the other advantage of that swivel there is that if I've got a particular lure like this and I really want to fish it at get it down to more like 6 metres, I can slip on a a ball sinker just before the swivel, and that will give me some extra depth. I used to clip on sinkers there, but lose more fish because you really need the sinker to slide when the fish approach. So these days I just use either quarter, eighth quarter, or half ounce sinkers, the wee ones with the hole in the middle, so they just slide up and down. But I don't do that much because normally my bib is getting me to the right depth. If I want to go deeper, in the summer you want to go deeper, the Helico range make these deep diving lures which dive down to about 8 metres, and a lot of people use them, and it really saves going to lead lines and things like that. I don't use them a lot in the hydro lakes and that, because it's really only patches of summer and that I want to get that deep. In the big glacier fed lakes like Safawea and that, then they come into their own a lot more. So there's one that goes to 8 metres. I've got another one here that goes to, with a very big bib on it, goes to 6 or 7 metres. And then if I want to go down about 3 metres, these ones here, which I buy on Trade Me, and I don't know the name, but I've got a lot of them, and they're very, very effective. And some smaller ones that go to about 2 metres. And you can also, if you want to stay shallow, troll traditional Rapala countdowns and floating lures, because they won't go very deep. Very deep as well. One of the advantages I used to find in the kayak of fishing the diving lures was that they float on the surface. So before you flick the bail over, and they pull themselves down with the bib. So it's really easy to let line out as you paddle, because you just throw the lure over the side, open your bail, and paddle till the appropriate amount of line goes out. I like a lot of line out for most of my trolling, so I sort of have a rough idea with my reels when I've got about 75 metres out, which is quite a bit. And sometimes I'll even go up to 100. I like to get well away from the boat. Boats scare a lot more fish than what we often give them credit. It seems to me that these diving lures, once they get down to, or a lot of them anyway, once they get down to their, like if this goes say 4.5 metres, and it might get down to 4.5 metres when I've got 50 yards out, but it doesn't seem to go much deeper if I've got 75 metres out. It must go a little bit deeper, but I don't seem to hit the bottom on shallower bits with that, so I can count on the depth that they go once I figure it out with a reasonable degree of certainty. So that's how I troll with diving lures. So whereabouts to use these diving lures? This technique I use in the hydro lakes and a lot of the small lakes of the South Island. As I said, around that 5 to 6 metre mark is often good, but if you're alongside some structure or a drop off, or more particularly off a river mouth, on Lake Apua I regularly catch a lot of fish trolling that about the 5 metre line off the rivers. During the day the fish seem to hold there, both rainbows and browns. So you've got to give a lot. It's no good just trolling around a lake without some thought as to where the fish will be, because you won't catch many. So as I say, working those drop-off structure, also over flats, and Lake Waitaki has a lot of flats that vary between 3 and 5 or 6 metres deep. They can be excellent with a not too deep diving lure, something that dives 2 to 3 metres. But but you need a lot of line behind you or a zigzag, because especially with a bigger boat, because you will spook those fish. I used to find the kayak in particular very good for that. Another place where that technique is over the weed beds towards the top of Lake Dunstan. Right up the top, the weed beds are very close to the surface, but as you just work down the lake, you'll find that they go down 2, 3, 4, 5 metres. So you pick an area to try, and by cutting across a similar depth, and I might use a 2 metre dive, or something to dive to 2 metres, and I might fish that 3 to 4 metres above, with the weeds 3 to 4 metres down. And a sounder is obviously really important for that kind of fishing. Deeper water in the summer, when thermoclines form and trout go deeper, Lake Benmore, that can happen quite a bit, but I don't tend to fish so much there in the winter. And a lot of our hydro lakes don't form too much of a thermocline because there's so much water coming in and going out of them. Lake Waitaki, for example, which I fish a lot, I can never really find, even on the sounder, a thermocline. But different years and different conditions, things. So that's about how I go about trolling. I do from time to time use Tassie Devils, which a lot of Kiwis do, but you've got to keep in mind that a standard Tassie Devil will only go down about 1.5 metres. So once you start fishing a bit, over water a bit deeper, your chances of getting fish, even though they will come up for them, they won't come a long way. So the chances of getting fish greatly reduces. The Tassie Devils that have the extra little hole so that they do dive deeper are quite good. I don't use them a lot, but I see some people having some success with those. I also troll with soft baits, and I will explain how I use those in a wee minute. Trolling soft baits, particularly over weed beds, can be very effective. Lake Waitaki, parts of Lake Aviemore and Lake Dunstan, and even Lake Brunner, it can be very effective. And what I do is I've got quite a nice little soft bait there. It's on that one is on an 1/8 ounce jig, and then in front of it I will put a wiggle disc, which I buy from America. Now they're a small disc designed to put action in soft baits and flies. I do a lot of harling on Lake Alexandrina, and I use these in front of my flies for in there, and they're very effective. But in front of a soft bait, and you can vary your jig size to get to slightly deeper depths. You won't get particularly deep, but as I say, for over weed beds, or areas like the river at Fisherman's Bend at the top of Lake Dunstan, where the water might only be, say, a couple of metres deep in places, these can be really effective. And they seem to pick up fish when the hard body lures won't, because I suspect they're not as frightening, or it's a more subtle way of presenting something to the fish. Sometimes you get short takes, and if you do, it's probably time to go back to hard body. But another very good way to fish, it's with these wiggle discs. It's not something I see a lot of in New Zealand, but it really is worth a go.